What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to ICNVDriversedition, and today we're going to have the conversation that you all have been waiting for, or at least the conversation that keeps coming up in my chats and previous Grand Sport videos. And yes, the Corvette bash is over. I've been watching the videos that have been coming out, and I've had some friends there that took some pictures and sent me some nice content. And in the midst of it all, there's still no Grand Sport numbers on performance. So again, I was trying to hold off on this video till we got more performance numbers, but the conversation piece just keeps picking up. So let's dive into the conversation. Is the new 2027 C8 Grand Sport or Grand Sport X better than the C8 Z06? Let's talk about it. So to dive into this conversation, I have to start off by sitting there saying the C8 platform has been amazing since it came out in 2020 until where we are now heading into the 2027 model year production. We have seen nothing but amazing cars keep hitting the market space. But as a Corvette owner, you have to ask yourself, what Corvette best fits your needs, your desires, and your personality when it comes to owning a car? And for many people, they have been hoping, wishing, and I even say praying for a C8 Grand Sport. But traditionally, the Grand Sport has been a wide body kit representing a C8 Z06 placed onto the stock motor offered in the base Corvette. And that has been a recipe for great sales numbers. Truthfully, the Grand Sport has always been one of the hottest selling cars that hit the marketplace. Well, for the C8 generation, they decided to not bring out the Grand Sport, and we got what we call a Corvette E-Ray. Now, the E-Ray was still a remarkable vehicle, but because of the hybrid and electric platform, many people didn't buy into it. And I still see that being a problem going forward with all the Corvette options today. So even today, as we sit there and talk about the possibility of a Grand Sport X, they don't expect sales to be high because the same buyers of the E-Ray are potentially the same buyers of the Grand Sport X. And if you couldn't look past the E-Ray hybrid system on a base E-Ray, why would it be so easy to look past on a Grand Sport? So the production numbers or the expectation of sales numbers really aren't high, and GM has come out and said that in so many ways. But now when we look at the C8 Z06, which has been the ultimate track-focused car, we start to realize with the new Grand Sport coming out for the C8 edition and it being offered in another motor variant than what we originally started with back in 2020, that has created some real interesting conversation. And let's get deeper into that. To really dive deep into this conversation and comparing which car is actually better, you have to kind of identify which type of buyer you are. There has been conversations about people looking to upgrade from their base C8 or just upgrade in general to a Grand Sport or a C8 Z06 because both cars are better performance versions than what we have today. But to actually figure out which performance version is better for you, I would sit there and say you have to dive into the heart and soul of both cars. For the new C8 Grand Sport, we have a 6.7 liter naturally aspirated V8 engine that's powering the heart and soul of the Grand Sport and the Grand Sport X. When you look at the C8 Z06, it has a 5.5 liter flat plane crank V8 powering what has been known as the highest revving naturally aspirated V8 to hit the market. Both cars have a V8 pushing them. Both cars deliver power in different ways. The 6.7 liter puts down 520 pound-feet of torque, whereas the C8 Z06 is still working right around 467. So if you think about it in this perspective, horsepower is what makes the car go fast, but torque is what gets the car moving. So the more torque you have, the quicker you should be able to accelerate, the quicker you should get moving. But the conversation piece with that is, if you're chasing pure performance, what performance are you chasing? If you ask me, since we don't have numbers in the 0 to 60 times for the C8 Grand Sport, looking at what we have today with the 6.2 liter now going up to a 6.7 liter, from 495 horsepower to 535 horsepower, from a 0 to 60 time of 2.9 seconds, I can only expect the 535 horsepower, 520 pound-feet of torque Grand Sport to be somewhere right around 2.7 in a 0 to 60 time. Many people will say, well, how will you get that? Because it has more torque. I feel like based off what GM has showed us so far with the Corvette, that getting traction will be the same problem for the C8 Grand Sport that it is for the C8 Z06. The only difference is when you launch the two cars, I still believe the Z06 2.6 second time will not be trumped by the new C8 Grand Sport. So if you just go out and purchase a base Grand Sport, you will not be faster than a C8 Z06. But when you go to the other side of the equation and you look at a Grand Sport X, well, I do expect the Grand Sport X to have more performance than the outgoing Corvette E-Ray. So if you look at the outgoing Corvette E-Ray, which is underpowered compared to the C8 Grand Sport X, there is no reason why you can't pick up a tenth of a second, if not two, with the new Grand Sport X. So at worst case scenario, we have a car in the X form racing 0 to 60 that should be able to put down a 2.5 or a 2.4 0 to 60 time. Now that's real impressive. And it actually outperforms the C8 Z06 compared to what it can do today. So again, if you're looking at all-out, flat-out performance in 0 to 60 times, the Grand Sport X may be the better car, but the question is, can you really accept the hybrid platform? But let's move past that. When you look at ultimate track performance, the 6.7 liter V8, although it's a bigger engine, is naturally aspirated and it has a lot more torque. At the end of the day, I'm sorry, it just will not outperform a C8 Z06 on the track. The C8 Z06 is still the ultimate track weapon, and when you look at the placement GM has placed it inside their lineup, it shows you that the Z06 is still the superior car when it comes down to that type of information. Now, I don't expect this to change, but the quarter mile times, if you step away from the track and we just go down a drag strip, the C8 Z06 will definitely outperform the base Grand Sport. Where the conversation piece gets interesting is, how bad will it lose to the C8 Grand Sport X? And when we look at the basic E-Ray numbers, which is a good foundation for the new Grand Sport, the C8 Z06 is technically quicker in the quarter mile than the C8 E-Ray. When you look at all number aspects, the Z06 crosses the quarter mile time always at a higher mile per average than the C8 E-Ray. But the E-Ray, due to the fact it doesn't lose traction like the C8 Z06, the E-Ray actually gets to the quarter mile typically a tenth of a second faster than the C8 Z06. But what actually happens is, if you actually get the perfect launch conditions in a C8 Z06, and it has been proven countless times over and over again from actual people on the street to some of your favorite car reviewers like Car and Driver, Road and Track, and so forth, that the C8 Z06 in all the right conditions can still outperform the E-Ray in the quarter mile. It's just not consistent at doing it, which matters to a lot of people. But when it comes to the C8 Grand Sport X, we expect those numbers not to be so close in the quarter mile, but overall, based off how the car performs and the weight difference, we still expect the C8 Z06, as it has been with the C8 E-Ray, to be faster in the half-mile run. Many people don't care about the half-mile run, which always starts the argument that the C8 E-Ray is actually faster than the C8 Z06 because they keep going back to quarter mile times. But when you watch any performance where you go past the quarter mile, the C8 Z06 not only reels in the E-Ray, it surpasses it. And I don't expect anything different to occur from the C8 Grand Sport X. And the reason why I say this is because I still expect the quarter mile times to be very close. And at some point in the half mile run, the weight of the Grand Sport to actually show itself, just like it does in the E-Ray, and the Z06 to keep moving on ahead because it's lighter, faster, and has a higher rev pulling range. That's the part about the conversation we talk about the engine that we kind of lose focus on. The Z06's max performance is between the 3,000 and the 7,000 RPM range, but the RPM keeps pulling all the way up to 8,500. When you look at the Grand Sport, it goes back to the traditional 6,500 redline range. So it doesn't pull as hard and as long as the Z06, which the Z06 pulling so hard and for a longer stint gives it more performance capabilities at higher speeds and lower gears and quicker runs. So if you let all that sink in, the Z06 is still a very dominant car. The reason I feel we keep having all these conversations today, or the conversation comes up in the chats and it's starting arguments, and people I run into on the streets and so forth keep saying Grand Sport or Z06, isn't because the Z06 is not the most dominant car. The reason why we have this conversation is because the C8 Z06, in my opinion, has been out too long. And when you see something that's been out too long, it kind of loses its flair. It loses its flair so much that we often forget how much of a track weapon, how much of a performance weapon this car really is. And part of that is because GM has come out with something else called the ZR1, which has taken leaps forward from what you can get out that Z06 motor. And then they even brought out the ZR1X. So the Z06 is no longer the new shiny thing because we have other cars that can outperform it. And then when GM turns back around and brings out a Grand Sport, yes, a Grand Sport and a Grand Sport X, they are the latest and greatest options, and the promotions make you feel like you have to have this car. But in all actuality, is the car really worth having over some of the other options that's already out there? I still believe the C8 Z06 is the ideal car to have. And when you look at GM's marketing, and I've been in conversations before, if you don't know, I used to sell Corvettes back in the C6 model run leading into the C7 Corvette generation. And as crazy as it sounds, let's just go like this. Remember when GM had their little run where they brought the C8 around to different dealerships and did their displays and talked about let people come out and see them, sit in the cars, and then they packed it up and left? Well, we had similar events like that back in the C6 and C7 generation. And a lot of these, as they call dealer ride events and so forth, what we got to experience were the conversations that was had, and I don't even mind sharing it, with engineers back then was the Grand Sport was built for the Corvette owners who couldn't afford the Z06 but wanted the Z06 look and presence. And I can agree with that. Now, many people will sit there and say, and the marketing strategy that they put out there for you guys is, oh, it's the best track weapon for the base model Corvette setup. But if that's the case, why did they make the Z51? So you have to understand the Grand Sport, although it has a great marketing slogan, it really is for the buyer that looks to want to have the Z06 appearance and really can't afford the Z06. But in today's economy, in today's pricing, what's funny about that is the new Grand Sport is coming out, and based off the discounts you can get on the current C8 Z06 for 2026, you can actually get a Z06 cheaper than you can a base Grand Sport. And in some cases, you can even get a C8 Z06 cheaper with more options than you can get a C8 Grand Sport X next year or when they release. So my question is, for the C8 owner that knows they really want the cars just because they want the look of the Z06, why not actually just buy the Z06? For the C8 owner that really believes the Grand Sport X is the ultimate car because it pushes out 721 horsepower, I've asked you to ask yourself, why did GM market that so low? Because my opinion is GM doesn't do bad business, and they're in the market of getting paid for the production and the performance they put out. So there's a reason why the Grand Sport X is technically cheaper than the C8 Z06. And if you let all that information sink in and you look at the pricing that you can buy a Z06 for today, there's not much the Grand Sport is better than the C8 Z06 at doing. And I said not much because truthfully, the Grand Sport in normal driving conditions, if you aren't launching the car, which is a big factor, will be the faster, more daily drivable car. The Grand Sport X will always be the faster, more daily drivable car when you're looking at the C8 Z06 because honestly, the C8 Z06 only performance problems is it doesn't really take off fast. It's not the quickest car. It's not the swiftest car. It's not the most comfortable car to drive when you're under 2,500 RPM. You see the lag in the Z06. So yes, for some people who want to point that out, I can understand you kind of gravitating to a C8 Grand Sport. It makes sense. Also, the C8 Z06 has a very loud sounding exhaust. Many owners love it. Some people hate it. Some people say it's too European and foreign. Some people say it's an F1 car that they've been dying to own. But if you don't like the sound and you actually care about your neighbors, that can be another reason why you gravitate away from the C8 Z06. But honestly, the Grand Sport has a nice sound exhaust as well. It actually reminds me of a 6.2 liter C8 with a boiler exhaust on it, or AWE. So it's not the most quietest option on the marketplace. But if you want to gravitate to a Grand Sport X so you can leave your house in stealth mode, more power to you. If you sit there and say you want a car that's better for driving in winter conditions, I can't argue with you there. You can drive a C8 Z06, but it's not the ideal car. The Grand Sport X will probably be the more ideal car to drive in winter conditions, but the base Grand Sport will be a better driver than a C8 Z06. So again, I come back to you and say, ask yourself what you're looking for out your ownership and what matters to you with owning your next car. If it's performance, it's hard to argue the C8 Z06. If it's daily driving capabilities, it's hard to argue against the Grand Sport. But I will sit there and say one thing to you, that regardless of which car you choose, both Corvettes are amazing, and GM has shown you they can make some nice cars that can rival anything on the market. So let me know in the comments below, which car are you leaning more towards, the Grand Sport or the Z06? I know this is a conversation piece that keeps coming up in all the chats and pretty much every conversation against the Grand Sport when it comes to value, pricing, and so forth, but it's all your money and how you want to spend it. If you ask me, and I'll be very transparent to you, you can get a nicely equipped convertible C8 Z06 for about $106,000. You can get a 2025 and 2024 3LZ Z07 package C8 Z06 on the used market. So if mileage is a problem for you, I can understand why you look to do something different. But in the terms of value and what you're getting for your money, before I would purchase a 2LZ or 2LT Grand Sport for 106 to 110 grand without, and you heard me again, without the Z07 package, I would probably gravitate towards a 2023 or 2024 with the Z07 package. But because I like the convertible aspect, I probably find myself looking more along the grounds of a 2023 or 2025 convertible because they're out there. And so for me, before I go out and spend the money on a new Grand Sport, and we haven't even talked about markups because they're out there, I've reached out to a couple of dealers along with several other people who were actually surprised that in 2026, we're still hearing the word markups on new Corvettes. But dealers are asking $5,000 to $10,000 over. And in both cases, I feel like that's actually saying something. 5 to 10,000 over for a Corvette Grand Sport just makes the cost of the car higher, and buying a C8 Z06 more reasonable and a stronger reality. At the same point in time, 5 to 10 grand over, it's the smallest markup we've seen on a car since the 2020 Corvette was introduced, and that didn't last long, maybe 2 to 3 weeks before the markups got astronomical. So when I see 5 to 10 grand from my local dealers, that tells me right now, as much as they believe the Grand Sport is going to be a hot ticket, they don't expect it to be a hot ticket. Meaning, they don't expect everyone to go crazy to get their hands on one. And when I talk to you guys out in public, many of you still like the C8 E-Ray and the Z06 because of the value you can get for the car. But again, like I said before, let me know which car you're going to buy. Let me know which car you prefer, and let me know if the Grand Sport is even on your radar, or if it's just nice to hear or see GM come out with it, but you still prefer one of the previous cars they made before 2027. ICNV Driver Edition. Go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, join the ICNV Driver Edition community. We are an interactive community, which means if you hit me up on any one of my social media platforms or in the comments below, I'll do my best to respond. And if the topic you bring up is interesting enough, just like this one, I may even shoot a video on it. But don't forget, we're also a community of car enthusiasts that love to drive cars to make you turn your head, that aren't your everyday people movers. If you're one of those individuals, go ahead and subscribe to the channel, lock into your boy. You don't want to miss the content we got coming your way. But at the end of the day, remember, we were all made in his image and given dominion over the world, which means we weren't just meant to be. So chase your dreams, build your visions, and remember, what is a world without hope? So never, ever give up. You can be the one and not the one at the same time. It is okay to be unique. We were all given gifts to become the best version of us that we can possibly be. So step into your calling, become the blessing to the world that you were meant to be. Just remember to stay humble, stay focused, and stay blessed. And I'll see you in these streets. Peace.